In a small West African town, there was an old college hidden deep in the forest. It was known as a place where students came to learn magic and wisdom, but it carried its share of strange stories. One rule was passed down from generation to generation: never follow the lantern in the forest. One evening, a group of students sat in their dorm, whispering about Nyah. She was the quietest student in the college, always alone, scribbling in a notebook filled with strange symbols. Some said she could draw better than anyone they had seen, but her pictures always looked wrong. Others swore they'd seen her talking to herself near the banyan tree, her voice soft and steady, like a chant. "I think she's a witch," Kofi said, his voice low. "She's hiding something," Ajua whispered back. "Have you seen her eyes? They are too bright at night. Like they're glowing." The room fell silent as the wind rattled the old windows. None of them dared say more. That night, long after everyone else had gone to bed, Kofi lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't stop thinking about Nyah and the strange things people said about her. His thoughts were interrupted by a flickering glow outside his window. At first, he thought it was someone carrying a lantern, but as he watched, the light floated too high, bobbing unnaturally in the air. His curiosity burned. Ignoring the warning etched into every student's mind, he slipped out of bed and followed the light. The forest was colder than he expected. The trees loomed tall, their branches twisting in the faint moonlight. The lantern floated ahead, its golden glow lighting a narrow path through the trees. Kofi hesitated but kept walking, his curiosity stronger than his fear. The light led him to a clearing where a fire burned low in the center. Nyah was there, sitting cross-legged, her head bowed, chanting in a language he didn't recognize. Around her, shadows flickered and moved, stretching in ways that didn't make sense. They looked like they were alive. Kofi gasped, stepping back. A twig snapped under his foot, the sound echoing through the silent forest. Nyah stopped chanting. Slowly, she turned to face him. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, golden and piercing. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. Kofi tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. "You followed the lantern," Nyah said, her tone colder now. "It only appears to those who seek what they shouldn't." The shadows around her began to move again, creeping toward Kofi like smoke. He turned to run, but the ground seemed alive. Roots coiled around his ankles, pulling him down. Nyah rose to her feet, her movement smooth and fluid, almost unnatural. "You think the college belongs to its professors, its books, and its rules," she said, her voice steady and low. "But it belongs to me. The forest belongs to me." The shadows wrapped around Kofi, pulling him closer to the fire. His scream was muffled as the darkness covered his face. Nyah leaned closer, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "Some secrets should stay hidden," she whispered. The next morning, the students found Kofi lying on the college steps. His skin was pale, his hair white, and his eyes wide open, staring into nothing. He muttered one phrase over and over: "The lantern is calling, don't follow it." No one dared to speak of what happened. The students avoided Nyah, their eyes downcast whenever she passed. One night, weeks later, Ajua woke to a soft knocking at her window. At first, she thought she was dreaming, but the knocking grew louder. Nervously, she peeked out. Kofi was standing there. His hair was still white, his skin pale, but his eyes glowed faintly, like Nyah's. "The lantern," he whispered, his voice hollow and distant. "It's calling again." Ajua froze as Kofi turned and began walking toward the forest. She pressed her hand to her mouth, too scared to scream. Outside, just beyond the tree line, the lantern flickered to life, its golden glow waiting. By morning, Kofi was gone, and his bed was cold and empty. Nyah sat under the banyan tree that day, her notebook in her lap, sketching with a calm expression. When she finished, she held up the page and smiled faintly. The picture showed a lantern, glowing in the middle of a dark forest, and a small figure walking toward it. The next night, the lantern appeared again. This time, it was closer to the dorms. No one could escape its glow for long.